everybody, it's Allison from CraftyisCool.com, and I am coming to you today to teach you how to make something that a lot of people have been asking me for, and something that I've been recently adding to my dolls that I am really enjoying, and other people enjoying them too. It just adds a lot of detail and a lot of life to your dolls. They look more realistic. So it is a hand with fingers. It's actually really easy to do. You have to concentrate, you have to count stitches, but I'm going to show you how. All we will need today is a D hook. This is my go-to. This is what I've been using for crocheting any of my amigurumi. You can size up if you need to, if you keep your stitches tight. D hook. Also a B hook. I apologize, but you do need a B hook. You need something small so that you can crochet those little tiny fingers. It's tiny, I know, but it's worth it. You'll see. You're also gonna need some scissors. You're gonna need a yarn needle. I like this little bent tip one because it helps you get in the stitches really good. You're gonna need some fiber fill. Here's some fiber fill. You don't need very much, probably about like that. It's enough. And then you're gonna need some yarn. Now, the yarn I'm using naturally is my new yarn, AmiguruMe SkinTones. I'm going to link a video below where I'm showing all the colors, talking about the different qualities of this yarn. So please check that out. This is a worsted weight. It's a light worsted, so it's thin enough where you can get really good stitch definition and get in there and do those little tiny stitches for the fingers. And this is tan one. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start with our yarn, and in this case I'm using AmiguruMe SkinTones, my yarn, in the color tan 1. Try to pull the yarn from the center instead of using it from the outside, and it will be much less likely to tangle. We're going to start with a magic loop. So in that case, you're going to make a loop with your fingers. Using a D hook, you insert it into the front of that loop, pull up a loop from behind, and then twist your yarn as you pull it out. To hold that into place, you're going to chain 1. And now you're going to start crocheting into that loop, and you're going to make 7 single crochets. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. After your 7th stitch, you're going to pull the tail and it will close up the hole, and you should have the first round complete. For the second round, you just single crochet into the first stitch and go around until you have 7 stitches, and that's your second round. You're going to continue crocheting 7 stitches in each round until you have a total of 15 rows. Okay, so I've sped it up a bit so that you don't have to watch each stitch, but you're going to keep crocheting all the way around. And while I'm doing this, just a little tip, when I'm crocheting, I sometimes use a stitch marker to keep track of my rounds, but in this case, I just count in my head. We have 7 stitches in each round, and there's 15 rounds. So that gives me 105, and so I will just sit there and crochet and count to 105, and then I will be done. So that's an easier way to do it. I'm sure most of you do that, but it's just a little tip that I like to use so that I don't have to keep track of how many rounds. It's just some math. all done. So you have a long tube. Now you're going to start an increase round. This round will be 9 stitches, so you're going to 2 single crochet into the first stitch. 1, 2, and that goes in the same stitch. Then you're going to crochet into 3 stitches. So that would be stitch 3, 4, 5. Now you're going to 2 crochet into the next stitch. So that's 6 and 7. That was into the same stitch. And then you're going to do 2 more. 8 and 9. So this is starting the hand. If you were going to crochet a sleeve, this is where you would have changed color right before you did that round. That would be the flesh round. This is 9 stitches. See? If you count the little V's, you can see there are 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You need to really keep track of how many stitches that you have in each round. There has to be 9 right here. Okay, so you're going to do 2 rounds of 9, and that will form the hand. Now that I have done 2 rounds of 9, the hand is finished and we're going to change hooks. So take your smaller hook, I'm using a B 2.25 millimeters, and insert it into the loop that you left from the other hook. Now you're going to really carefully count your stitches. The next 2 stitches, you're going to put 2 tiny stitches in each of them. So we're going to really got to pay attention to where your stitches are. There's 1, 2 into that first stitch. And then you're going to do 1, 2 into the second stitch. So in this round, you've made 4 stitches and they're small. The rest of the stitches in that hand, you're going to skip. So to continue making the finger, you have to skip all the rest of the stitches. And you're going to start what's called branching. You're going to make 4 stitches in your next round. So the tiny stitches you already did are going to make up your finger. So start on the first stitch that you did, insert your hook. Make sure your working yarn is coming out of the center of where your finger is going to be. Okay, so you're gonna cross over and do 1. These are tight. 2. 3. And 4. Now, if you look at it, you can see that there's a finger forming. Keep going in that tiny round. You're going to do 4 more, and that's your next round. 1, 2, 3, 4, and your last one is 4. Now that was the last stitch, so you're going to insert your hook in the next stitch, pull up a loop, and then pull it all the way through the loop on your hook. That's a slip stitch, and that will fasten off your yarn. So cut it enough so where you can weave it in later, and then you finished your first finger. Ta-da! So now we're going to stuff it. And you don't need a lot of stuffing, but you're going to insert a small amount into the top of the arm, and then you can use something to push it down into the arm. You can use a stuffing tool, which a lot of times comes with polyester fiberfill, or you can use a pencil, use the eraser end of a pencil. That's what I like to use, and it kind of grips the eraser kind of grips the stuffing. So don't overstuff it, because then your yarn will stretch, it might show holes. And then make sure that the hand is stuffed. And that's all the stuffing that we're going to use. We're not going to do any more stuffing after this step, because the opening is going to be too small for us to really get any stuffing in there. And that's it. So we're going to start the second finger. So we're going to get our working yarn, make a slip knot with the yarn to hold it onto the hook using our B hook. You're going to pick up where you left off on the hand. Right next to that first finger, the next open stitch, you're going to insert your hook and make 2 single crochets in that one stitch. And that's already going to be half your finger. So we're using the stitch right there, and then all the way across, we're going to use that stitch right there. And you're going to put 2 stitches in each of those. So watch what happens. Okay, so that's 1 stitch. And then in the same stitch, you're doing another stitch. So there's 2 single crochets there. Skip the whole rest of the hand, turn it around, and use that very last stitch. You're going to do 2 single crochets right there. So that's 1, 2. So you've completely bypassed the whole rest of the hand. And that's making another branch for your second finger. Now the tricky part is to work around in a circle. So you're going to crochet back into the first stitch that you just did and hold that tail out of the way. Sorry, you can't see this part very well, but I think I'll situate. There you go. Okay, so you're going to crochet into the first stitch. See, I have to hold this right up to my face when I'm doing it, so I got a little distracted. But okay, so that's crocheting into the first stitch. In the second stitch, and then you're going to keep turning, and you're going to go into the next one. That's 3. And you have to really find that V of the stitch. You cannot go through the other side of the finger because it'll make it shaped really weird. Okay, so this is going to be one of the middle fingers. There's like 2 outer fingers and 2 middle fingers, and the 2 middle fingers are going to be a little bit longer. So you're going to make an extra round. So you're going to do 2 more rounds of 4 on this one of the middle fingers. It just makes the hand shape better when you have 2 longer fingers in the middle. Now, I clipped that starting tail to get it out of my way. It's pretty secure, it's not going anywhere, so it makes it easier to see where I'm stitching. So just keep going around and make 4 stitches for each round. Like I said, you're going to do an extra round in this one because it's the taller middle finger. Or it could be the ring finger, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes you have to really fight with your yarn to try to get it into the right place, but be persistent because if you get it into the wrong place, it can really throw you off. It throws off your stitch count. So just, you need to look really carefully and make sure you got it under 2 little bars of the stitch. So that's gonna make it shaped correctly. Each round needs to be 4 stitches, and I know that's tiny, but that's what you have to do to make these little fingers. So the same thing, you're gonna fasten off with a slip stitch. You can leave that tail for now, just clip it. We're gonna weave those in when we're done. Okay. Make sure it's tight. Like I said, there's no more stuffing. If at this point you think it looks like it needs more stuffing, I guess you could add a tiny, tiny bit. But it really doesn't need it. Join the yarn the exact same way as you did for the second finger. Make a slip stitch onto your, a slip knot onto your hook, and then join the yarn at the next available stitch in the round on the original hand. There's going to be 1 stitch there that you're going to use. So you're going to crochet 2 single crochets into that 1 available stitch, skip 3 stitches in that round, and then you're going to wind up back next to that 1 leftover stitch right next to that other finger, and you're going to do 2 single crochets into that stitch. 1 and 2. Now you have 4 stitches in that new round. You're going to start a new branch for a new finger. Sometimes it's really hard to find where that first stitch is, but if you just look at where your knot is, you just have to go right next to it. And you can always weave in that starting tail later. That's what I chose to do here because I couldn't get around it. It's hard to get around it sometimes. So you're going to do 1 single crochet into that first stitch. And then you just keep going around into each of those 4 stitches. That was 1, this is 2, and then 3, and then the last one, 4. So that was the first round. Now you're going to keep going. It gets easier on the subsequent rounds to see where you're supposed to be stitching. I left all this in just so you could see. I think the fingers are quick, but it's important to see exactly what you're doing, and I think it helps to watch, even though it's a little bit tedious. Each stitch, just follow along. Now that was the last one, and you're going to do a slip stitch to fasten it off. So you're done with 3 fingers. And clip it, you'll weave that in later. Now, on the original round of that hand, you're going to have 3 stitches left. Okay, that was the beginning yarn tail, so I like to just pull it in with the hook. It's really easy. It's secure too. It's not gonna unravel. And then you just trim that. It's nice to do it as you go so there's not a bunch of loose ends hanging in your way. Okay, so there's going to be 3 stitches here that you're going to use. So the only difference here is you're only going to have to make 1 increase. 1, 2, 3, there's the 3rd one. Okay. So join the yarn, make a slip knot, join the yarn with a single crochet on that next available stitch. Okay, so you're joining your yarn into that first available stitch with a single crochet, and then you're going to go into, that was a mistake, I was going to put the increase right there, but what I'm going to do is go into the next stitch and make 1 single crochet. So that's 2 stitches so far, and now we're going to put the increase in this last one. That's 3, and then the last stitch is going to be 4. So now you've used up all of the stitches in the hand. You have 4 fingers. Now that's the beginning yarn tail. We want to kind of move that out of our way, but we want to stitch into that first stitch. So I'm going to show you, there's 4 stitches here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, right next to that beginning yarn tail is your first stitch. It's really hard to see sometimes. Okay, so you have 4 stitches. So just keep turning the work. Use that beginning yarn tail kind of as a guide to where your first stitch is. And you're going to crochet right into that stitch. Okay. So that's your first single crochet. And there's your second stitch. You're going to keep going around. There's the third stitch. Sometimes you have to fight to get your hook in where it needs to go, but just be persistent because it really matters. So that was the last stitch, and you're going to fasten off with a slip stitch into the next. So then you clip it off, and you should have 4 fingers with long, yarny fingernails like that. There's that beginning yarn tail. I'm going to weave that in with the hook just to get it out of the way. So now I'm going to weave in these ends. All you need to do is take your yarn needle and thread it right into the center of each finger and out through the hand. You don't have to weave in that top round or anything. If it looks loose to you, you can do that, but I just go through the center of the finger and out through the hand, and it works fine. Okay, so we're finished weaving those all in, and you're going to trim those. Now we're going to start the thumb. And the thumb is worked just like those other fingers, except you're going to start at the tip of the thumb. So you're going to do a magic loop and chain 1. Then you're going to single crochet with your bee hook. You're going to single crochet 4 stitches into the ring. Once you have 4 stitches, go ahead and pull the tail to close the hole, and then you're going to crochet into those tiny 4 stitches all the way around. You're going to make 2 more rounds of 4. When you're crocheting in the round, I don't know if you've noticed this, but your work naturally wants to turn inside like a bowl, and you're going to be crocheting on the wrong side. So what you have to do is turn it out so that you'll continue crocheting onto the right side of your work. So keep going around for 4 stitches for each round, and so like right now in my head I would be counting stitches, and I think that I would be counting to 8. So you can see there's tiny, tiny stitches, and there's 4. Just keep an eye on that because you need to make sure that you keep having 4. If you crochet incorrectly, you can end up with 5 or 3 or whatever, but your stitch count will be off and it will not look right. So make sure you keep your 4 stitches in the round. Fasten off with a slip stitch, just like the other ones, and clip it. Leave a little bit longer till this time because you're going to have to sew that to the hand. So thread that tail onto your yarn needle and then hold it into position where you want it. Now for the hand, it's actually reversible. It doesn't really matter what side you use. So it would look good on this side or this side. So it's up to you. Just make sure when you're doing 2 that you make 1 of each. You're going to hold it into position onto the bottom of where you started the hand and just stitch the base of that thumb into place. You don't want it sticking straight out on the side, so I like to do it kind of flat up against the hand. Once you have it secure enough, you're gonna weave your yarn tail back in. You can knot it if you'd like, just to hold it into place really well. Make sure everything is where you want it, and go ahead and weave that in so you can trim it off and you'll be done. So now you're done, and make sure everything is stuffed correctly. Kind of shift around the stuffing, and your hand and arm should be complete. Not too hard, right? All right, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you figured it out. I hope you were able to follow along. There is a written pattern for this. It's a PDF you can download from CraftyisCool.com with tons of pictures, and I even put like little arrows showing where to put each stitch. Like I said, this pattern can be used with any of your dolls that are the standard larger size. My Doctor Who, my Hamilton, all of those patterns that I wrote in the past that had more of the traditional little rounded mitten hand. But you can interchange and add fingers if you'd like. Those are still cute with the little rounded hand. But a lot of people wanted to add fingers. So then you can put jewelry. You can make little hand symbols. My friend said she really wanted to make a doll that was throwing up the peace sign. So here you go. You can stitch that together, or I haven't done this, but I've seen people do it. You could put tiny wires, tiny wires in through the fingers. So you could pose the fingers, or I would probably just stitch it. You could do some sign language. I love you. Or hook 'em horns. There you go. So anyway, lots of possibilities there. So make sure you check out the pattern. Make sure you watch my other video about my yarn. I'm really happy with it. And I hope that you stay crafty and cool. Thanks. Bye.